Hey guys, what's up? It's Matt Lane, and welcome back to another podcast episode, your weekly podcast with Jay Bussin and myself, here to talk about gaming news, and anything of the like, any of the stupidity that we feel like talking about. Today, I guess a little different, kind of, not really, but a little different than what we normally do. We're going to talk about a recently released system that we actually talked about in some previous episodes, but now that it's been out for a little bit, and one of us being Jay, that has owned the system for a few days, a day. How long has it been?
I picked it up Friday night. It is currently Sunday afternoon, so I've had it for about 36 hours.
Okay, I mean, enough for a gamer.
Well, 48 hours, I guess.
Enough for a gamer to have broken it in by this point.
Well, considering it's pretty much all I've been doing for those 48 hours, then yes. Why don't we just jump straight into it here? So I pre-ordered the Nintendo Switch. I do not regret that decision. It's actually a ton of fun. It's very small. Like, I knew the screen was small going into it. Everyone's like, oh, I didn't realize it was that small. Mm-hmm. It wasn't that big, but I was just kind of, like, shocked at how, like, light and small everything is, which is not a bad thing. I enjoyed it a lot.
What is it comparatively to the Wii U tablet?
Let me pick up my Wii U tablet. Where did my Wii U tablet go? Here it is. Compared to the Wii U tablet, it's a little smaller, roughly the same size, but like a pinch smaller.
The tablet itself or the screen? The
screen's a little bigger / the same size, but the tablet itself is smaller than the Wii U. So, it has like no dead space on it, which is nice. The screen goes almost all the way to the edge of the console itself. And that is the console. Everyone thinks, like, when you think of a console, you think of like this big box you put on your desk. But the console itself, 100% of all of the guts of the console is the handheld thing. Mm-hmm. And then if you want to play it on a TV, like a normal person would, then you just throw it into the dock. And the dock just has an HDMI cable and a charging cable, if you want to, running out of it into your TV. And then it just shows up. It's a pretty smooth transition, too. I thought it would be like, okay, you pull it out of the dock, then you have to press a button and wait for it to sync up. Kind of like with the Wii U, you had to like hit the TV button and all that jazz. But no, it's pretty seamless. Like, you pull it out of the dock, it shows right up on the screen. You put it back in the dock, it shows right up on the TV. So I'm pretty happy with it. The one complaint I've had so far is with the Joy-Con controllers. Mm. There's no good way to charge them. Because I take the Joy-Con controller, and it comes with this little dock for the Joy-Con controller to turn it into like a regular controller. It just slides into these two grips. But it doesn't have a charger on that. So the only way you can charge the Joy-Con controller is to have it into the system while it's charging.
That seems like poor design.
A little bit.
That's kind of surprising.
Yeah, I really thought the Joy-Con grip would have a charger on it, but it doesn't.
Well, I know you haven't had it for long, so it's kind of hard to say. But what is your typical battery life on it so far?
I've never run out of battery on the Joy-Con. I ran low a little bit once, but that's because I had been playing for like 8 hours straight. So I don't know what the exact battery life is on it on numbers, but pretty much when I'm done with it, like I just put it down so we can record this, and I'm gonna pick it back up the minute we're done. And so, like, right now, it's just charging, and it does charge very fast, though, I will say that. It charges pretty quick.
Now, what about the tablet itself?
The tablet itself, I don't know firsthand experience-wise, because I've been playing mostly with the tablet in the dock on the TV. I haven't really taken the console to go, except to play in bed every now and again. But I've been playing for probably undocked for about 2 hours now, and the battery life was at like 40-something%. So that's pretty good.
So it's pretty close to what they said it would be then.
Yeah, well, actually, they had said it was going to be about 2.5 hours, and it's far surpassed that.
They said 2 to 6 is.
Yeah, 2.5 to 6, depending on what you were playing. And Breath of the Wild is no small game. It is a massive game and has a lot to load.
Interesting question. Does it have a brightness meter on it to where you can turn the brightness up and down?
I believe so. It also has a night mode where you can make like the menus and all that stuff black. So that's kind of fun.
Interesting.
Kind of like an iPhone does.
I know
Or
there's
any smartphone.
a million and a half things we could talk about the Switch, but we only got a minute left on this topic. So,
I'm glad you set a timer because I completely forgot.
so Breath of the Wild. What's your take on it so far?
Honestly, best Zelda game I've ever played.
Really?
Hands down. Blows every other one out of the water. The story, like, I loved Majora's Mask for the story. I loved Twilight Princess for the story. This one, I don't even know what the full story is because I haven't spoiled or anything or whatever. But I'm already super invested in this game story-wise. The gameplay is fun. I have a few annoyances with it. I'm not a big fan of breakable weapons systems like the old Fallout games or whatever, where like you need to repair your weapons or they can just flat out break and things like that. And this game is riddled with that. But it does force you to try out new kinds of weapons because there's more than just swords. You can fight with halberds, spears, a friggin' mop. Like, there's tons of weaponry in this game, and it's kind of fun.
Interesting. And I've heard they've added a jump button.
Yes, that was very surprising to me. Because this game gives you control, like, right off the bat, just full control. And I was just pressing all the buttons, figuring out what does what, and I jumped. And I was like, what? This is a Zelda game. Why am I jumping? But it's entirely necessary for the kind of game this is. So
For sure. I figured as much. Well, that's going to be it for that topic. So that pretty much answers a good bit of questions I feel like most people would have out the gate about the Switch or possibly even Breath of the Wild. So if you haven't picked up either of those and you're interested in it, here's some content that you can listen to later for
highly recommend Breath of the Wild. Besides just being one of my favorite Zelda game of all times, it's honestly contending for best video game I've ever played. So
now, and before we move on, the one interesting thing I would be curious to see would be the comparison between Breath of the Wild on the Wii U versus the Switch, in actual person, like actually be there and see it.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting to see. But moving on, so if you've never been part of any of our podcasts, listening to them, we always talk about a main topic for about 5 minutes or so, and then kind of move on to several games that are coming out or concepts that are coming out or kind of whatever we want to talk about. And we talk about that for about 2.5 minutes is what's supposed to be, and my idiot self in the first couple episodes said 2 minutes and 50 seconds because I guess I was thinking currency or whatever. I don't know. Either way, I'm an idiot. But it's supposed to be...
You heard it here, folks. You heard it straight from the horse's mouth, man.
Oh, yeah, you don't have to go very far to hear that I'm an idiot. Like, there's plenty
Just
of things I can
wife.
do. Right, or anybody that really knows me for that matter. John will tell you backwards and forwards. That being said, so 2.5 minutes gonna talk about Tekken 7 is gonna be the one I'm gonna talk about, and more so I'm probably just gonna talk about Tekken in general, because if I talk about Tekken in general, I feel like I'm gonna be talking about Tekken 7. To be honest, I don't. Jay, have you played much of the series?
I suck at fighting games. I am awful at them, save like Smash Brothers, because that's such a different control style.
Right.
But I've tried before. There's an old video of me and John at PAX East playing like one of the Street Fighter games, I think it was, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a camera pointed at the arcade cabinet screen, and it wasn't good.
Well, imagine this, because you've played Injustice, I would imagine.
Nope.
You have not played Injustice. Okay. Where have you been?
Playing Breath of the Wild. What do you think I'm doing right now?
Why are you on this podcast? Just kidding. It'd be like, to me, when you think about the idea of having 7 Tekken games, you at least know how Injustice works. I guess, like, have you ever, like, watched anything on it?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, so, I mean, it's just a fighting game, just a one, player versus player, from the side angle that you just kind of do the back and forth thing. Very similar to Mortal Kombat or anything like that. And think about having 7 of those. Like, I mean, what do you do?
Yeah, exactly. Like, how can you shake it up and make it new and different? I mean, you can
Right.
you can add dynamic camera angles that are frustrating
And don't get it misconstrued. I'm not necessarily dissing Tekken in any sort of way. It is a very renowned series, and if it's still going, that should tell you something, that it is obviously still successful if they're still being able to make them.
Yeah, I mean, the fighting market is huge.
Right. But in terms of change and what you're going to see that's new, it's really nothing, anything that could just be like, hey, this is, flashy, fancy new thing. Not really. It's just like small edits here, small changes here, maybe a new character here. But Tekken's been holding on to those several prime characters for a long time now, especially I can't even remember his name anymore, but the old guy with the pointy side hair and the mustache of Fu Manchu going.
Yeah, I forget what his name is.
Yeah, it's been a long, like, I've typically only played Tekken in the arcade, so I've never been one for home. But that being said, it's going to be, I can still vouch for it because I still play Madden, so I'll stick up for you, Tekken people. Virtually nothing changes on those games, okay?
Especially recently. Like, they always come out with something new. They're like, oh, the ball handling is now dynamic. And it's like, no, it's not. It's not any different.
Especially with updated rosters now to where they actually do that. Because that was one thing that did cause a huge need to get the new ones because the rosters wouldn't update. So you wanted to get those new players that came in.
Right.
To which now they do that automatically, which I think was a good and bad thing because it helped in a way to where you get stuff, but at the same time, that kind of eliminated the need to get one every year.
Yeah, well, the thing about Madden is that it's run by EA, so they just shut their servers down and force you to buy the new one. So
that is true. But I've gone way over time for that. But that being said, like it's still going to be a good game. It's just don't be setting high hopes for just being anything different. It's going to be Tekken. It's going to be modern graphics. It's already out in Japan. But it's coming out in America sometime around June 2nd, and it'll be on PlayStation and Xbox, so either systems will be fine there. But that's well over time on that one, so I'm going to be moving on. And then Jay is going to take us on a quick ride for a series of his I'm going to let him tell you all about. So 2.5 to 3 minute timer. Go ahead.
All right. So today we're going to be talking about the Crash Bandicoot remake, the Insane Trilogy remastered, whatever it's called. I'm looking forward to this. I did not grow up with a PlayStation. I was a Nintendo child growing up. I had a Game Boy. I had a Nintendo 64, GameCube, Wii U. Now I got a Switch. But I married into the PlayStation family, all right? When I got married, my wife brought her PS2 over, and we had a ton of fun. And part of that is she brought over all the old Crash games. And so I have, like, the original Crash Bandicoot games on PlayStation. And I've played them a little bit. I haven't beaten any of them because, I don't have the nostalgia for it.
Right.
So I can't just be like, oh, this is a good game. Because it's like, honestly, at this point, the hitboxes are so janky. The controls are slippery. It has not aged necessarily as well. I mean, it's like playing Mario 64. You don't play it because it's a good game. You played it because you loved it as a kid.
Right. That's how it is with me trying to play Zelda. Since, like, you literally just described my life with Zelda because I didn't have it growing up. So I tried to play it when I was older, and I was like, I see how I would have loved this as a kid, but it's really hard to jump into it now.
Yeah. But I completely understand that sentiment. But the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, it's going to come out this June 30th. It's kind of dropping on us pretty quick. They announced it about a year ago.
And it is yet another PlayStation exclusive.
Yeah, honestly. Jeez, Sony, just chill, dude.
2017 is going to be lit, yo.
It is. There was some issues getting this to work because Activision held the rights to Crash Bandicoot, I guess,
that's
for a long time. Because, like, even though Naughty Dog, I think, developed it, Naughty Dog developed it, Activision published it. And so Activision was holding on to it for a good long while, and Naughty Dog was like, please, we just want to do this again. Like, actually, if you play Uncharted 4, in, like, the second chapter, you actually play one of the levels in Crash Bandicoot.
Nice.
Like, it just flat out boots up the game, because Naughty Dog owns all that or whatever.
Right.
And Activision kind of, said, all right, fine, let's remake this. Let's start from the ground up. It's brand new. It's not just, like, an HD remake like you see of, or like an HD port rather, that you see of like The Last of Us or Twilight Princess or Wind Waker. It's from the ground up being remade just like the original, but with modern controls, graphics, etc. So I'm about out of time on that one, but this is the game besides Breath of the Wild that me and my wife are both really looking forward to this summer, which is usually a dry spell for video games.
Very much
so. This is going to be a good time.
Absolutely. So interesting thing there. Always seeing remakes is always an interesting time because it can either be great or it can be absolutely horrible. So you really never know what's going to happen there. But be on the lookout for that sometime in June, as Jay said. And that's going to be it for the podcast today. Always appreciate you guys stopping by and listening as always. And at the end
I'm shocked that it's still happening, honestly.
that
people continue to watch it, so we continue to make it. Go figure.
I mean, it's, it's people just like stupidity, I guess, is what it is. But at the end of every podcast, we come up with a question of the day. And the one we're going to do today, I know Jay said he might have a little issues with this since he didn't play it, but I kind of thought about it as he was talking about PlayStation 2, and it was such a huge console with the biggest library out of any of the consoles that ever existed.
Gosh, that console was massive.
Right? So
they were still making games for it up to like 2015.
Yeah, there were.
2014, something like that.
And that's insane to think about. But that being said, this is going to be a really hard question for a lot of people, I think. But what is your favorite PlayStation 2 game, either from your childhood or now or whatever you want to do? What was your favorite PlayStation 2 game to play on the PlayStation 2? Not to play...
Are you talking PS2 exclusives? Or?
Doesn't have to be exclusive, just it is what you played on the PlayStation 2 at the time.
Gotcha.
For me, and I don't mean one playing it in remaster, I mean like you played it on the PlayStation 2. For me, this might be a weird one. Star Wars Bounty Hunter was one of my favorite things because if you recall, PlayStation 2, that was kind of a precursor era, if you will, to the open world games. That really hadn't happened yet because none of the consoles were really strong enough to do that. And that was about as close as it got to open world. It still would by no means be comparative to open worlds today, but it was a very large linear game, if that made sense. Like you had your linear area that you were stuck to, but it was a really freaking big area that you could do different stuff in. So, and you started out kind of OP because you're freaking Jango Fett. So you could literally just walk around and interact with random AI. So that was a huge thing. Like it wasn't as if they walked by and nothing happened. You could walk by and depending on what you did, they might react different. They might talk to you. You could tie them up and set them on fire. Just like a random bystander. But I know that's not, it's like a sadistic thing to do, but the fact that you could just walk to some random person and the game would let you do that as opposed to, the string just like shooting through them because the game designer didn't want you to do that. Like you could interact with everything in the game. And that was a big deal around that time because that didn't happen in the PlayStation 2 days. That was not a thing. So that's why for me, and plus I freaking love Star Wars. So, it was just a win-win for me. But that's my answer. I know Jay said he didn't do a whole lot in his younger days. So I don't know if he might have as much of a nostalgic answer. But off the top of your head, where would you go with on that answer?
I played a lot of PS1 games because my buddy Kenny, growing up, he had a PlayStation. I had a Nintendo 64, so we'd like go back and forth on that a lot. But geez, the Twisted Metal series,
good one,
was a lot of fun. Mostly on the PS1. I think Twisted Metal 1 through 4 came out for PlayStation 1, and then Twisted Metal Black came out for the PS2. But we had a ton of fun with those games growing up, so that might be my answer. I can't really think of anything else.
I mean, that's fair.
I'm looking. I literally Googled top 100 PS2 games, and I didn't play any of these.
That's a fair answer given your circumstance. But that's going to be it for today's podcast episode, guys. Again, thank you for stopping by and listening, and make sure you answer the questions of the day in the comments below. What was your favorite PlayStation 2 game to play? Make sure you check out both of Jay's channels. He has a YouTube and a Twitch channel. We'll make sure to have the link and URL into the description. And one last thing before we go, episode 10 is approaching us. And if you watched episode 5, you heard us say a little bit that every 5th episode we want to do something special. So up until the point of episode 10, I want to ask an extra question for you people that are watching the comment below. What would you like for Jay and I to talk about in episode 10? This is very dangerous, but we are likely going to let y'all decide what we talk about. Please behave.
You can put a bunch of stuff gaming related or otherwise down in the comments. We'll ignore all of it and just talk about football. So
I would prefer to say gaming since that's what we're doing, but I mean, if you have a topic in mind, just throw it out there. I can't guarantee we'll do it, but we want to hear what y'all want to hear about. And we will talk about it. And episode 10 will be a longer than normal episode, kind of like episode 5 was. So, again, just question of the day, favorite PlayStation 2 game, and then what would you like to see?
What's your favorite PlayStation 2 game and why was it Shadow of the Colossus?
That was also really high up there. If I had not had such a high attachment to Star Wars, that probably would have been my answer.
See, I haven't actually played it, so I can't call it my favorite. It's a good game, though. I got a ton of respect for it. All right, thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you next week. Same time, same place.
Jay and I will keep jabbering. We'll see y'all later.
All right, back to Zelda.
Exits are the best.
We're so good at them.